there is a mineral, if there is a mining opportunity, and it's impeded by a blind frog, goodbye freedom.
Mining is back in favour.
You know, this is not a communist state. People are allowed to run businesses and make money. It's not actually illegal or immoral. It's a thing that keeps us going.
And it's being fast-tracked.
So it's about simplification, one-stop shop. It's not about reducing environmental standards.
But some opposing new mining believe the tide has turned against conservation.
The floodgate is open and running hugely.
Welcome to the NBR Podcast. I'm Simon Shepherd. Let's jump back to 2010.
Making a noise about mining. The mood festive, but the message quite clear.
Thousands protest plans to mine on conservation land. Now, fast forward to 2024. Another protest on Queen Street. Its focus, the government's fast-track approvals bill, which is full steam ahead. Here's National Party Minister Chris Bishop.
Houses, roads, ports, renewables, quarries and mines are all fundamental requirements for our economy to thrive. Some may not like it, but there is no doubt we need all of them.
In total, 149 projects have been named in the proposed laws, and one of them involves a frog in the Coromandel. The tiny endangered Archie's frog is found in the area where gold miner Oceana Gold is proposing to extend the Waihi North underground mine. It would mean mining and tunnelling underneath conservation land, the Wharekiroponga forest.
For anyone that's been up there, and I've been up there, that is beautiful forest, waterfalls, swimming holes, native birds, wildlife, exactly what, we think of as classic New Zealand, and they want to build a massive underground mine there.
Morgan Donoghue leads the group Ours Not Mines, which opposes the extension of the mine. They've been to court, lost, and are appealing. But now the project has been named on the fast track.
I wasn't surprised. Oceana Gold had made it clear that they were going to go after the fast track. They'd announced it to their shareholders.
It's a process from our point of view about simplifying the way you apply for your approvals and consents in a way that allows you to move through those processes and get to the important part, which is the project execution. But it's not about reducing standards.
Alison Paul is from gold miner Oceana Gold.
For us, we will be looking to meet the same standards we always do and have for over 30 years in New Zealand. So it's about simplification, one-stop shop. It's not about reducing environmental standards or the way we respond to community concerns.
Do you think that there is a perception that this could be a way that environmental protections or standards are either bypassed or reduced? Is there a perception out there about this process?
Definitely there's a perception. I think that's not necessarily reflective of the bill that we've seen. I don't know what the bill's going to look like in due course, but it has some very extensive information requirements and a requirement for the panel to decline approvals and consents if they're not satisfied with the level of information that's been required or provided.
So how does that compare with what you would have had to go through to get consent for, say, the Waihi North underground extension?
For us, there will be no difference. So while we will be putting forward the same amount of information and the same level of technical assessment, the same level of consultation, we expect that the process itself will deal with that in a more efficient way.
Well, I have spoken to Oceana Gold, and they say that this will not lessen their approach to environmental safeguard. The fast track to them changes nothing. It just might happen a bit quicker.
Yeah, I mean, their environmental safeguards and mining in general, you can talk a good game and you can say that, we've made all these advances in technology in mining. The reality of this process is that you still have to take all of that ore out of the ground, right? So, yes, it's underground mining. Yes, there's still going to be massive dump trucks once it gets to the other end. Yes, you're still going to put heavy metals through all of that, right? Mm-hmm. So mining hasn't really changed in 100 years.
Morgan Donoghue references a recent event in the Karangahaki Gorge.
What the hell has happened to Karangahaki River? What's all that come from? As far as the eye can see.
Onlookers were shocked when the Ohinamuri River turned orange from heavy metals and cyanide leaking from a 100-year-old mine. The NBR podcast can't say whether that's a fair comparison or not to Oceana Gold and its practices. But Morgan Donoghue is not reassured by company reassurances. You don't believe the reassurances?
I don't at all. You can look at Oceana Gold's track record around the world. You can go and look at the Philippines, and if you go back to a news
What's their track record been in the Coromandel in terms of safety?
In the Coromandel, they've got one mine there that they bought off another miner.
So we already come to this with a great deal of understanding about what's expected of us, for example, in terms of what we do in the conservation park. So there'll be no difference in that. We intend to be lodging an application that meets the expectations of our stakeholders. And through the process, we'll be looking for opportunities to make sure that stays the case.
The protest action over Oceana Gold's plans involves high-profile Kiwi musicians donating lyrics to raise funds for legal action. It's a direct contrast to Greenpeace's direct action approach.
I am here today from the Stratera headquarters, where myself and two other Greenpeace activists are locking down Stratera's Wellington headquarters.
It occupied the headquarters of mining association and lobbyist Stratera to protest the controversial Taranaki seabed mining plans by Trans-Tasman Resources. The project, previously rejected by the Environmental Protection Agency, has now been placed on the fast-track list. There is the perception that this new process undermines or overrides current environmental protection laws. What do you say to that?
So it doesn't.
Josie Vidal is Stratera's chief executive.
People still have to make an application to the Environmental Protection Authority, still be assessed under the bill once it's passed, and still have environmental measures placed on the project. So nothing actually changes dramatically. What I am quite upset about is there's quite a lot of hysteria around this bill, and I don't think people understand it. This is not a war. It is incredibly ignorant to talk about a war in New Zealand when there are real wars going on, and many people carry trauma from past real wars. So it's beyond a responsible use of the word. There's no engagement, there's no trying to find solutions, and it's misleading the public. And I just hope the public do take time to realise that, New Zealand's not in great shape, and we need jobs, and we need contributors to the GDP. And mining, we're a primary producer, right? And when one part of the primary production is down, another one can pick it up. And mining's picking it up at the moment. Some of the other areas are not going so well.
Yeah, I understand that. There is this argument, though, that this is short-term expediency that we as a country might come to regret in order to fill that sort of, production gap that you're talking about.
Well, I challenge that. What are we supposed to do? Just continue to watch manufacturing plants close in regional areas? All our young people go to Australia? This is a solution. This is a good solution. And sometimes you have to shake things up. Sometimes you need a disruptor. I'm a big fan of disruptors. I was using Uber the day they came in. A disruptor is good. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, but mining can be seen as a disruptor with negative consequences as well for the environment or for communities. And then once the resources have been extracted, and then it's all over.
Well, that's what happens is a mining company pays a bond when they take out a permit to mine, so that if something goes wrong and they run out of money, there's money to restore the land. But they also sign up to a mine closure program. It's a lot of misinformation about what happens. With Oceana Gold and Bathurst being on this list, those are two mines that employ a lot, or two mining companies that employ a lot of people. And what this is doing is giving surety of employment for those people for some time to come.
There are 20 mining and quarrying projects in the Fast Track Approvals Bill. All projects listed have to be considered by an expert panel for approval once the Fast Track passes into law by the end of the year.
There's nothing in there about balancing environmental considerations. They are second-order considerations for the expert panels. And how that's going to play out, of course, is going to be pretty interesting.
Gary Taylor is from the Environmental Defence Society.
Yeah, I think the risk is that we'll see some bad stuff happen. And that would be a shame because, most of the projects on the list are actually projects that, have some social and economic positive benefits to them. I don't think they'll be wanting to be dragged into a debate about the minority of projects that could go bad on us.
Does it give a sense that there's no point anymore in trying to oppose any of these projects on environmental grounds?
Well, it gives a sense that it's more difficult to do that. I've always been, we're at the sort of the business-friendly end of the green spectrum, if you like. We kind of support positive economic growth. But you'd have to say that, and you'd have to say that surely we're clever enough now to do that without stuffing up the environment. So, why do you have to make it easy for bad stuff to get through? It just seems a bit nuts. So, yeah, it'll be more difficult, more challenging. But if there's very bad stuff that's happening, if there's if Freddie's in the crosshairs, then we'll be speaking up for Freddie through whatever processes we can.
Freddie, remember, is Shane Jones' mythical blind frog. Freddie doesn't actually exist.
No.
Okay. When you look at the projects that have been included, you've mentioned that there are some really good ones in there, and then there are some others which have been sort of come back from being declined. But the overall strategy, what do you make of that?
Well, there is no strategy. This is just a blancmange of ad hoc wish list type applications. Every man and his woman and their dog was invited to throw their hat in the ring, and many did. There's no coherence there. I've always thought, and I'd have thought most sort of business leaders too that I speak to would agree with this, that it's really important that we get some strategic direction around particularly public infrastructure.
Gary Taylor believes a more joined-up approach is needed, and he hopes that the coming repeal and replacement of the Resource Management Act will realise that opportunity. And in the meantime, do we have a Band-Aid? Is this what this is?
Yeah, it's a Band-Aid. It is a Band-Aid. And it's got an obvious political motivation because we already have a Fast Track Act that's working well, that's approved a lot of projects. So in a way, the only difference here, as I said, is the weakening of the environmental standards and the one-stop shop. It's a short-term ad hoc binary view of everything, really. It's kind of develop or bust. Any development is good development. Stuff the environment, that doesn't matter too much. And I really think that, many of your audience, the business people that I connect with, and I do that because I help run the Climate Change and Business Conference every year, they're not anti-environment. They see the need for good environmental protections. They don't want bad stuff to happen.
As mentioned earlier, the mining industry believes protections will still be in place. And what's more, it says, This new legislation will change New Zealand's reputation as a place to invest.
I think it will change for the good. So I talk to Australians and investors in Australia almost every day. They're very interested in what's happening in New Zealand because they've got governments in Australia that are turning against mining. And so they're very interested in investing in New Zealand.
How many of these mining companies on this fast-track bill are overseas owned and listed overseas or owned overseas?
Probably most of them, because that's where the money comes from. But that doesn't mean they're not employing people locally or that people don't have. I mean, a lot of people I know have shares in Santana. It's a listed company. You can buy shares.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
so...
But the argument is that if the bulk of these companies, whilst, as you say, do put into communities, etc., when they are here, but the money that they are making goes generally offshore back to shareholders or stakeholders.
Well, it depends where the shareholders live. Some of the shareholders live in New Zealand. And, you know, to my knowledge, you know, this is not a communist state. People are allowed to run businesses and make money. It's not actually illegal or immoral. It's a thing that keeps us going.
So let's go back to the Coromandel and Oceana Gold's plans to extend its Waihi North underground mine underneath conservation land. What does it mean for the land, for the endangered Archie's frog and the local economy? Here's Alison Paul again.
The impacts on the surface, we've done a lot of technical assessment to understand those, and we believe that they will be acceptable and really minor. They certainly won't involve making the kinds of changes to the Archie's frog population in terms of reducing that population and that those kinds of threats that I think people are concerned about. But in terms of the rest of your question, what will this deliver in benefits apart from those benefits? It will deliver jobs. So we employ over 300 people at Waihi at the moment. That will continue, and there will be additional jobs that come through this process. We will mine in today's dollars something like $4 billion worth of gold and silver. That's what we're targeting. We do intend to maintain our presence in Waihi community. We train and recruit locally. So 25% of our Waihi workforce went to the local college, to Waihi College.
Oceana Gold is waiting to see the final fast-track laws before it decides whether that's the way forward. The Ours Not Mines protest group says it's determined to try and stop it.
You've got 50,000 hectares on the Coromandel that they want to mine on. A multitude of companies, none of them New Zealand, some with New Zealand names but owned by overseas shareholders. It makes no sense. No other business requires the land to be handed over that is owned by you and I and every other New Zealander, and then to be given such a poor rate of return. If your business requires that, then you don't have a very sustainable business, in my mind.
Last question then. Do you fear, with what you just said about the amount of conservation land on the Coromandel Peninsula, do you fear that this is opening the floodgates for mining in that area?
It's the floodgate is open and running hugely.
And that wraps up this episode of the NBR Podcast. Links to all the audio used can be found in the description. Thanks to content producer Jake Latham and creative director Michael Hickmott. For early access to every new episode, subscribe at nbr.co.nz. Next week, it's the pioneer of private capital, a rare interview with Direct Capital's dealmaker, Ross George. I'm Simon Shepherd. We'll catch you then.